Do you have one of these? Thickness planers come in all shapes and sizes, but most of them have a few things in common. The feed rollers slip, they leave snipe at the ends of your boards, or the blades become dull too quickly and they're expensive to replace. Today I will help you solve all of those problems one at a time with some simple tips that will transform your thickness planer from one of the most frustrating tools in your shop to one of your favorite woodworking machines. Let's start with the most common problem, slipping feed rollers. If you have to push the board through the planer, you have issues that need attention because an uneven feed rate will leave more machine marks on your wood and it will wear out your machine faster. The most common cause of slipping rollers is gunk buildup. If you plane pine boards, you probably have this problem a lot. But it can also come from other types of wood. The resin gets on the rollers and they simply lose their grip. Obviously, you have to clean the gunk off. But how do you do that without damaging the rollers? Unfortunately, there's a lot of confusion out there about what type of solvent's safe to use. Even the manual's unlikely to tell you. But here's what I've learned over the years. Just because a solvent may not be great for rubber doesn't mean a little bit is going to hurt your rollers. You aren't soaking them in it. You're just putting a bit on a cloth and scrubbing off the built-up resin. I've used naphtha to clean my rollers for years with no issues at all. Mineral spirits also work well. You could also use denatured alcohol, though it might take a little extra scrubbing. If you live in a place that restricts these types of solvents, then you might try a blade cleaner like this. It's designed to remove the same gunk from saw blades and router bits that you have on your planer feed rollers. It works really well, and it's non-toxic. I'll link to it below this video if you want to try it. Whatever you use, be careful. I've seen folks hold a cloth against spinning rollers with the machine on. That's just stupid. Unplug the machine and wipe the parts of the rollers that are exposed. Then, with your hands away from the machine, turn it back on for a second so the rollers can rotate and repeat the process a few times until you get them nice and clean. While you're at it, clean the bed with the same solvent. Then apply a coat of paste wax. That'll make it slippery as snot and your roller problems should be solved. But what if they aren't? Maybe your planer is really old and the rubber has kind of glazed over and turned hard. Before you look for replacements, you might try one more thing as a last resort. Get some 80 grit sandpaper and give the rollers a bit of a buffing. Don't get too crazy. Just rough up the outer surface and expose some new rubber. Again, this is a last resort before tossing them in the junk pile, but I've seen it work pretty well. By the way, if you don't have good dust collection attached to your planer, you're going to have more of these problems because the dust drops right on the wood and then the rollers pass over it and it gets embedded in the rubber surface. A shop vacuum may not be enough. You might want to consider at least a portable 4-inch dust collector. The next most common problem people seem to have with thickness planers is snipe, or indentations left at the ends of the boards. This is caused when the end of the board that's coming out of the planer dips downward, lifting the other end that's still inside upward at the crucial part of the cut when only one of the feed rollers is still engaged. It can happen when you feed a board into a planer as well. Some machines suffer from this more than others, depending on how far apart the two feed rollers are. The solution is to support the board better as it goes in and comes out of the machine. If you have extension wings, make sure they're properly aligned to get as much flat surface as possible. If that doesn't do the trick, then you might consider building a longer support table that can fit inside your machine. Melamine is a great material for this because it's very slippery. For extra long boards, you might use some roller stands on the infeed and the outfeed side. Just be sure you get their height properly adjusted so they don't make the problem worse. Another tip I've used in the past is to attach some scraps of wood to the four corners of your board with hot melt glue or double-sided tape. Make sure they extend about 4 inches past the board's ends. You're essentially making your workpiece longer so the snipe will be on the scraps instead of the nice board. Try it, it works. Now what about that dull cutter problem? You've already helped yourself by tuning up the rollers, but there are some other things you can do to extend the life of your knives. Most important is to pay better attention to what you're feeding through the machine. Manufactured materials such as plywood, particle board, MDF, even boards with dried glue or old finish on the surface will wear out your knives faster than natural wood fibers. Another often overlooked issue is dirty wood, especially rough lumber. There can be all sorts of grit embedded into the surface. I always use a wire brush to clean up my rough lumber before I mill it. Eventually though, your planer knives will become dull. There are ways to sharpen them, but frankly, by the time you notice they need sharpening, they're likely so dull that you'll have trouble grinding them evenly, and most thickness planers don't have an adjustment mechanism to compensate for one blade being ground slightly narrower than the other. So you have two real options. The first is to find a reasonably priced source for replacement knives. For years, my source has been mywoodcutters.com out of Canada. They have knives for many of the older machines, even the really hard to find ones, and they're less expensive than the manufacturer's prices. It is worth going there now and getting an extra set so you have it on hand when you need them in the middle of a project. I'll link to it below the video. The other option is to consider upgrading to a helical carbide cutter head, which will take years to dull in most shops. It's a big investment, but it will improve your planer in so many ways, including the quality of the cut, the effectiveness of your dust collection, the noise the machine makes. If you use your machine more than once a while, a new cutter head is an investment that will pay for itself way more quickly than you think. I made a whole video about it, which I'll link to below. And here's where I got mine. MyWoodcutters.com is the sort of small business I like to support. Stefan is a great guy, and he can find you knives and cutters for almost any joiner, planer, shaper, or molding machine. And his are the best prices if you're planning to upgrade to a helical carbide cutter head. Please use the link below this video to check with him before you buy somewhere else. Some small businesses are just worth supporting.